Welcome back. In this video, I would like to invite you to explore some questions for the media about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and for the intellectuals who still believe you can convince Netanyahu and Hamas to be good boys. It's frustrating to see all the media coverage centered on Trump's ceasefire, which, according to the media, would force Netanyahu and Hamas to work together for the good of Israel and Palestine, to work for a peace that is against their best political interests, since both Netanyahu's coalition and Hamas thrive in chaos and fear. All this while nobody in the media explains topics like this. Number one, how Gideon Carrot makes any more sense in terms of counterinsurgency than the almost 17 months the IDF has been playing whack-a-mole with Hamas in Gaza. Why does the media keep treating the war in Gaza as a conventional war when it's an insurgency, clearly an insurgency, and so needs a political solution? Unless, of course, you find acceptable the Chechen solution, the way Putin turned Chechnya into a failed state, not different from some Central American republics since the 80s, in order to make them politically harmless. So we need to put the spotlight on this issue, which is fundamental, because how is Israel going to win if they don't follow a sound counterinsurgency plan? Where do you see in the counterinsurgency experience an army chasing the insurgency first in the north, then in the center, then in the south, then again in the north, then again in the south, then again in the center, then again in the north? This is ridiculous. Even the French military offensive against the Algerian insurgency made more sense. And even then, because these are political wars, after the victory of the French in the Kasbah, in the capital, 3 years later, they were leaving the country. And Algeria was not accepting even the offer of being an independent region inside France, and demanded conditional independence. So since this is a matter of counterinsurgency, how does Netanyahu or the let's not mention Netanyahu, how is the West Europe picturing victory in the case of Israel? Because if it doesn't make sense, why do you keep funding its war machine? If its real goal is really to turn Gaza and then next the West Bank into a booty for the Netanyahu's coalition, why do you keep funding Netanyahu's war machine without conditions? Those conditions should be precisely that they engage in sound counterinsurgency. Even the IMF help to countries like Argentina demand conditions, and yet with the military aid we give Israel, we have no conditions attached. Another condition should be the respect of Israel's democratic institutions, which under the excuse of war are under assault by Netanyahu, and we know no conditions attached. Keep playing guacamole with the IDF along all the Gaza territory, first at the north, then the south, then at the center, then evacuate the north, then evacuate the south. How is this clown car taking place before our eyes, as if there were no, as if there were not a history of counterinsurgency experiences, both failed and successful, we could use and invoke. Why is the media not placing this question in this context? Two, how realistic is to expect a political solution from Netanyahu's coalition and Hamas, the two parties more interested in political chaos and fear? And why do present again this question? Because I want to highlight the part of the political solution. The Olmert plan presents an alternative to this absurd dilemma between Hamas and Netanyahu's authoritarian ambitions, which even Farid Zakaria characterized as a move into illiberal democracies. Why is nobody talking about this political solution, and specifically Olmert's plan, since Olmert has name recognition and the role of Arab countries in this peace process? Because who is going to occupy Gaza after the ceasefire? Are we back in Netanyahu all this time, all for Netanyahu to turn Gaza into a time bomb that is going to produce future conflicts, or more likely to evict Gazans from their land in what is undeniable a case of ethnic cleansing? So why is mass media not talking about this issue in order to avoid the most unjust and counterproductive outcome, which could be Netanyahu's ambition? We have received ceaseless, exhaustive coverage of Netanyahu's attacks on humanitarian aid, and that's important. But if we don't want to keep talking about the humanitarian problems in the next decade, we should address the solution. And it could be even more important than the Netanyahu's assault on humanitarian aid. Number three, what explains the obvious distrust from Netanyahu's coalition to Trump's reconstruction plan, which could imply the permanent eviction of the Palestinians? In the end, both want the Palestinians out, yet the Israeli far right is making more difficult the ceasefire that would precisely trigger such eviction. Seeing Gazans starve is more important for the Israeli far right than settling in Gaza, annexing the West Bank, because that would be the almost unavoidable result of the Gazans being evicted in the name of reconstruction. It doesn't make sense. European powers pressure Netanyahu on humanitarian aid, but not about the political solution, even though it's not humanitarian aid as needed as it is what is going to be solve the problem. In other words, how do European powers vision peace? Or are we contenting ourselves with another patchwork? This actually would be worse than a patchwork, because once Gazans are evicted, they are not coming back. And if you believe that would be unjust but would solve the problem, mm, that would unleash a wave of terrorism and anti-Semitism that is going to benefit only those who thrive in fear, like in the case of Israel, Netanyahu, and the far right. So are we are we uh, deploying all our political all our diplomatic power just to secure that Netanyahu well, not Netanyahu, but Netanyahu's part of Likud is going to win elections in the future. So this is another point that needs some highlight. 4. Will Palestinians be allowed to return after reconstruction if in Trump's plan? If so, the evicted Palestinians could be a permanent source of instability for the investment in Trump's Riviera. That doesn't make sense either. So, because can you imagine Trump building his Riviera in the coast of Gaza, while in the back he has a lot of resentful Palestinians plotting attacks day and night, throwing rockets on his hotels? That could mean that could make no sense. And why is the media paying very little attention? Because some attention they pay to this issue, but not in the right context. The right context that would be the occupation of Palestine in terms of political jurisdiction by an Arab force in combination with the United States to guarantee the interests of Israel, because Israel must keep existing. But the interests of Israel are not the interests of Netanyahu, and the media, is not highlighting this process. What is the role of that Arab countries are going to have? So, in the end, Palestinians can return in terms that don't create a time bomb that is going to explode either on Trump's Riviera the coast or again more lethally in Israel itself. And finally, number 5, will there be any role for Fatah in the new Palestinian Authority if such a thing still exists after the war? If so, how can you prevent the repeat of 2006? Fatah losing elections to a radical group after years of corruption and subservience to the Israeli government. And we know that after Hamas won the elections in 2006, there was a fight with Fatah, and they took militarily by force the Hamas, took militarily by force Gaza in 2007. This is probably what's going to happen without enough time to overhaul this Palestinian Authority, which is also contemplated in the Olmert's plan. And yet we see some countries in Europe sympathizing with putting the Fatah in charge of Palestine, or what remains of Palestine, in conditions that are unavoidably repeat this history before 2006. This doesn't make sense, and why the media is not putting some highlight on this situation. So, as you see, I have these 5 questions that deserve more attention than even the death toll that Netanyahu is imposing on Palestinians. Because, let me be clear, a body count was used by us since Vietnam to Iraq, and we know it doesn't work. And yet the press keep pushing on that line as if it had ever worked. It doesn't work when it comes to counterinsurgency. And let me be clear, I would not shed tears if the casualties came only from Hamas, because if you are with Hamas, I understand that you hate what Netanyahu, not Israel, Netanyahu is doing to Gaza. I would not shed tears, but even if you don't care much about the Palestinians, the Palestinian population, the more you attack the civilians, in this unconventional war, the more people with rage about, the more Palestinians enraged by what is happening in Gaza are going to join Hamas. That's why, as far as we know, Hamas has replenished its numbers at this moment. So maybe they are enraged Palestinians without the military training the former Hamas had, but remember the intifadas. You don't need to have much training to have a bomb vest and killing innocent Israelis in revenge for what Netanyahu did to Gaza. So why is not the press, not the press, some articles in the press, but mass media, especially broadcasting and YouTubers, not highlighting these issues, which are what are going to determine whether we have a patchwork that is only going to be the prelude of another war and more civilian casualties, or the opportunity to at least get permanent peace, which is possible, at least make it possible, but you will not be able to do that if you don't even know what Olmert is proposing. So why is media just chasing the rabbit as always, instead of putting their eyes on the prize? Why is the media watching the finger pointing the moon instead of watching the moon itself? So I wanted to share with you some of these questions, in this case, these 5 questions about Palestine. And having said that, let me leave you with our newscast.
Good evening. This is Brian Thomas Simons, and these are the main headlines of this hour. Among other news,
Stephen Miller admits influence of Hannibal Lecter on his career and vision. Stephen Miller, President Trump's controversial advisor on multiple issues, especially immigration, and undisputed ruler of the Department of Justice, admitted in a recent interview the influence Hannibal Lecter has had on his career and vision of government. Hannibal Lecter always did what he had to do. No doubts. That was a great influence on me. That was about the time I discovered that my mission in life was to destroy the lives of immigrants. Since then, I have even practiced faces before the mirror to make sure I was always playing the character. I have seen all his movies, declared Miller to NBC News. Secretary Rubio via Zoom from the Maldives, Harvard listed as a terrorist organization. Had they admitted President Trump when he applied, things would have been different. Secretary Rubio via Zoom from the Maldives, Harvard listed as a terrorist organization. Had they admitted President Trump when he applied, things would have been different. Secretary Rubio was allowed to give an interview to NDTV World, where he announced a new executive decision listing Harvard as a terrorist organization. President Trump could never forgive them because they rejected his application in 1964, and he had to content himself with Fordham instead. Had they admitted President Trump when he applied, things would have been different, Rubio declared in a brief interview via Zoom. Senator Schumer defends play dead strategy and slogan, "We look forward, not backwards," after vote that passed President Trump's big beautiful bill. Senator Schumer defends play dead strategy and slogan, "We look forward, not backwards," after vote that passed President Trump's big beautiful bill. Senator Schumer announced that the next step of the Democrats' play dead strategy will be supporting Trump's budget bill in the Senate. That way, voters will see that we, as Democrats, are always bipartisan, moderate, and will miss the days we were in the White House. We will win. We will win. We won't rest. We look forward, not backwards. declared Senator Schumer before returning to the Senate floor. DNC Chair Ken Martin renews his call to the nation to have their priorities clear and support Rachel Zegler's Snow White on Disney+. The Democratic leader urged all Americans not subscribed yet to Disney+ to do so. After Elon Musk stepped aside from the Trump administration and Democrats were forced to change their whole 2026 campaign, Elon is not cool, DNC Chair Ken Martin declared. We have to stick to what we know, and renewed his call to support Rachel Zegler's Snow White in Disney+. Frustrated with reporters who harassed him with questions about when Democrats were going to present an alternative to Trump's redefinition of government and the place of the United States in the world, Chair Martin responded, "Enough of focusing on boring stuff. Not only is Snow White sinking in Disney+ rankings, but also Evita doesn't look well. We're failing Rachel because we are not doing our job, and when I say we, and mean we Democrats, and you, the media. Come on, guys. Let's focus on the mission we have ahead of us," declared Chair Martin before confirming that the message for 2028 is still, "Trump is not cool."
This has been the news of this hour. Sponsored by Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit. Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Savior? Did you vote for Trump in 2016 and then in 2020? This is the right church for you. If so, Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit is the only Christian church that can promise you in the Lord to have 72 virgins in heaven for only a donation of $50 a month. You will have access to those 72 virgins in heaven. For an additional $25, you will be allowed to replace 10 of them, and for $100, Heaven Premium, you will be allowed to choose them for yourself. Guaranteed, if you're not satisfied with those 72 virgins after you die, full refund of your money. We accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover.